I see a lot of vintage Christmas ornaments. Oh, whoa. Welcome to episode 28. In this episode, we went to a house clean out in Carolina Beach. The lady was just trying to get rid of everything in the house, so she sold us 2 truckloads of our truck for $60. $60, $30 a truckload. But unfortunately, we didn't get any footage at the house, but we did find some gems in the 2 truckloads we got. I wanted to show you guys a couple of my favorite ones we found in there. One was a World War II scrapbook that was just really cool. It had a lot of newspaper clippings of killed in actions, missing in actions, when people got Silver Star or Purple Heart notifications, stuff like that. A lot of soldier, airmen, sailor profiles, things like that. Super cool. I probably underpriced it. It sold within 2 hours of me listing it, so I've definitely probably sold it for a little too cheap, but that happens sometimes. But we got such a screaming good deal on it. Obviously, we're still gonna profit off of that stuff. And a very cool glass crystal necklace from West Germany, vintage necklace, an earring set. But let's get into it and show you what we got. Okay, here are the 2 pieces that I wanted to show you from the house clean out in Carolina Beach. Like I said, we got 2 truckloads for $60, so $30 for each truckload. We got all kinds of stuff, furniture, the whole nine, but we didn't get any footage of it. But these are a couple of the highlights that I thought were pretty interesting, so I thought I would show you guys and share them with you. The first thing here is a scrapbook. When we opened this scrapbook up, we found out that it was a scrapbook from World War II. There's a lot of KIA notifications, MIA notifications, soldier, airmen, sailor profiles, a lot of them from the area. This scrapbook, the person that made it is from Mooresville, North Carolina, I believe, which was probably, I think now Mooresville is a town of only about 55,000 people. So back then it was probably kind of a small town. It's a little above Charlotte near Lake Norman. But as you can see here, the first page you open up, it says killed in action. It has 4 clippings. The first is Colonel Courtney Mills, J. Edgar Alley, Gunner's Mate First Class, First Sergeant Nathan Freeze, and Lieutenant Fred Lawrence. Put the page over. You can see here it says, Courtney Mills took charge, realizing death was certain. Fred Lawrence, wounded, was last seen firing his pistol at the Japanese platoon. Nathan Freeze was killed in Africa. Japanese got J. Alley in Pearl Harbor. You read it, and then you go down here, and you can see that they're actually, some of these, they actually lay out exactly what happened and how they died. The first says here, Lieutenant Fred Lawrence was killed in action on July 30th in the New Georgia area of the Solomon Islands. In a letter to his parents from the chaplain of his outfit, it was learned that Lieutenant Lawrence was killed when the Japanese made a counterattack on a ridge the Americans had recently captured. The letter stated that Lieutenant Lawrence was wounded and that the last time he was seen alive, he was lying on the ground firing his automatic pistol at the onrushing platoon of Japanese. The Americans were dislodged from the ridge, the letter stated, the same day, but recaptured the ridge the following morning. It was then, when the ridge was taken again, that Lieutenant Lawrence's body was found and removed to the Central International Cemetery in New Georgia Islands, where the soldiers lost in the Southwest Pacific will be eventually buried. So that's pretty interesting to hear how Lieutenant Fred Lawrence was killed in action. Here it says, First Sergeant Nathan Freeze was killed in the North African fighting last summer. Because the censorship rules differ in the European area from those in the Pacific, little is known of the events surrounding his death. So we don't know exactly what happened to Nathan Freeze. Next, it says, J. Edgar Alley, Gunner's First Class, was killed by the Japanese when they made their sneak attack upon Pearl Harbor. He was on the capital ship Arizona and died at his battle station. He was posthumously awarded the Purple Heart. Divers working on the Arizona recovered his personal belongings from the lockers of the ship lying at the bottom of the harbor. So he died in Pearl Harbor. This stuff is very interesting to me. I love watching World War II documentaries, and I found this. I immediately thought it was super interesting. Unfortunately, stuff like this, sometimes I think I undersold this thing. It sold within 2 hours of me posting it. I listed it for $49.99. It was such a unique piece. There's not really a great way to gauge its value, so I kind of just came up with what I thought was a fair price. It immediately sold, so I probably went a little low on it, but that's all right. Somebody will find a new home. I'm sure whoever bought it is very interested in this kind of stuff, because I know I am. But anyway, the next one here is Colonel Courtney Mills. It says, because survivors of the bomber in which Colonel Mills was killed are now hospitalized in this country, it has been possible to obtain detailed information as to how Courtney met his death. Colonel Mills was wearing his regular chest pack chute. This type of chute is constructed as to permit the removal of the detachable pack from the harness. He was wearing the harness at the time, but he had set the pack itself behind his seat. When the 88 millimeter shell struck the plane, I was knocked out and believe that everyone else in the plane was also lost their senses. When I awoke, the plane was in a torrent of flames and was diving. I know that Colonel Mills was still in his seat when I awoke. I couldn't move because of the dive the plane was in, so I just relaxed. A few seconds later, the gas tanks must have exploded, for I woke up in midair and had just enough time to pull the ripcord. There were fragments of the plane falling all around me. The plane must have been blown to bits. I was taken by the Germans and then rescued a week later by the Americans. The accident occurred at approximately 7:45 a.m. Tunisian time. That was a very important mission, so Colonel Mills insisted upon himself in riding in the lead plane. The fact that the Allied drive from the west depended upon the success of this mission that morning made it all the more important. The American ground forces driving down the road from Majez El Bab toward Tunis, but were stopped by very heavy, concentrated German gun positions about 17 miles east of Majez. Our mission was to displace those gun positions and permit the ground forces to break through at that point. We bombed the positions and turned north toward Matur in an effort to get back across the lines without taking unnecessary anti-aircraft fire. But about 15 seconds after the turn, we were hit. Colonel Mills directed his command expertly and had been responsible for many successful blows dealt to the enemy. He was respected and admired by every man under his command. Being in full command, it would have been customary for Courtney to have remained at headquarters and chart the mission by radio. Because it was the first time his command had functioned as a complete unit in full force, and because it was one of the most important missions on the front at this particular stage of the battle, he not only elected to make the trip himself, but insisted upon riding in the nose of the lead bomber. There were 8 men in Courtney's plane, and it is judged from the correspondence that Courtney had about 50 or 60 bombers under his command. They accomplished their mission, wiped out the German gun emplacements, and returned with only 1 plane lost. They were using the B-25 or Mitchell bomber on the mission. It looks like Colonel Courtney Mills was awarded the Silver Star for bravery far and beyond the call of ordinary duty, the citation states. In an effort to save his crew as the ship was about to explode, he took the controls in the face of certain death and ordered his men to jump. So he saved the lives of his crew, and he flew the plane until it exploded so they could jump. Amazing. Here it says, gets Distinguished Flying Cross. Corporal Hager has been awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for service in the Air Force in the Pacific area. In the citation, it stated that he had been on more than 25 missions carrying supplies to General MacArthur's men in the jungles, often operating under fire from the Japanese. Corporal Hager is the son of Sam Hager of the Williamson's Chapel community. Here you can see more of the profiles and news clippings. Here's a wounded. More just soldier profiles, sailor profiles. Okay, this here says fought hand to hand with the Germans. The story goes, we waited until after dark, said Richard. Then we climbed into jeeps and started moving. We rode all night. and at daybreak we stopped in a bunch of thick woods and hid there all day. That night we started again and got about 10 miles from Gosva, where we started digging in that night. The next morning we fought our way into Gosva and took the town. We chased the Germans about 5 miles beyond Gosva and dug in again. It rained all night, and the next morning our holes were full of water. The Germans failed to counterattack, so we struck for Alcatraz. These are crazy names of these towns. We went into action there, but we got pushed back. The next day we hit them again and made slow gains. We fought all over the place for a week. At times we were 12 miles in front of our tanks and artillery. Just us, guys in the infantry up there, fighting with everything we could get. Hand grenades, bayonets, and even rocks. We finally took a big hill and dug in, hoping the tanks and artillery would protect us. We had been there all night, and at noon the next day, all hell broke loose. Jerry had found the hill with his 88s, and we had to move back about 3 miles, where we dug in again. We stayed there 2 days while our big guns and tanks found the enemy's spot and were plastering them plenty. The company commander came down the line and told us the time had come for the big fight. We came out and fought all day, moving up slowly and surely. That night we dug in and waited for daylight. The next day we fought forward again, but the going was getting tough. A lot of the fellows were getting hit, and that was making the rest of us mad. We dug in again that night, and the next day we came to a big hill that was standing between us and more ground. Jerry had 4 88s and a nest of machine guns planted on it, and were spraying the living hell out of us. We had to stop and dig in again. That night the battalion commander came down the line and said that Company E and the 1st platoon of Company M had been picked to take the hill. That was my number. The 1st platoon of a Company M was a machine gun outfit, my outfit. We got out our C rations and started through the darkness. It was dark and everything was quiet. We walked 3 miles until we got hit within about 1,000 yards of the hill. Then we stopped in a little gully and dug in. We were to charge the hill at 2 o'clock. We started moving up the hill, but Jerry had us outnumbered. We had to fall back. A lot of the boys were killed. The commander sent back 2 more companies, and when they got there, we lined up in a long line and waited for the command to start again. The moon came up, and it was just before daybreak, and we started firing and moving on Jerry. The men were yelling, cursing, and getting hit. The machine gun fire from the hill was deadly. One boy in my crew was killed, and the rest of us really started giving Jerry the works then. It makes me want to scream, even now, when I think about it. We took the hill, but we lost a lot of men, and the Germans lost plenty too. We dug in and tried to hold the hill, but the Germans made a counterattack. In a counterattack, they swarm all over you. We got so close that we picked up their own hand grenades and threw them back at them. They came at us with tanks and artillery. We stopped most of the tanks. I lost my first machine gun there. We kept firing it until the tank bearing down on us was about to run over us. Then we had to leave and fall back. The artillery forced us to give up the hill. We were falling back over open ground. There wasn't a spot of protection anywhere, and the Germans were spraying the hell out of us with 88s and machine guns. We moved back about 3 miles and they sent us more guns. We had lost about everything we had. Then we moved up again. This time our artillery was helping us, and we chased the Germans off the hill and never stopped. We just kept on chasing them. A person will never know how terrible battle is until they go through one in the infantry. I mean, that's amazing. First-hand accounts of these battles in World War II from someone who was right in the middle of it. These are more just profiles and newspaper clippings. This headline says, "A Gold Star mother writes to the boys, states she would rather her son die in freedom than to live in slavery. Since my son was killed in North Africa, I've been asked occasionally how I felt about the war, how a mother feels who has seen a son in full bloom of strength and manhood march away to never come back. It is a hard question to answer. We knew that Nathan was in the combat zone and he was in danger, and only a mother could know the silent worry and anxiety this brings. But we hoped and tried to believe that no harm would come to him, that he would come home to us. Then so suddenly one afternoon the telegram came saying he had been killed. It was a terrible shock, but it was so hard to realize the full meaning of it, and that the shock was softened a little. As the days and weeks go by, it begins to become more real. Our son will never come home. His comrades wrote back that he died like a man. Somebody has to die in a war. There must be death to be a victory. I would rather he had died in freedom than to lived in slavery. And I know that he died with the knowledge that his buddies, you boys in uniform all over the world, will see to it that he did not give his life in vain. Merry Christmas to all of you, and God bless you. And may God bless you and bring you home safely. Mrs. Troy Freeze. More clippings and profiles. Okay, here's an article. Sergeant Marvin Sigmund, 50 missions. Mooresville man given air medal and other decorations for achievement. 50 missions in a flying fortress over France, Greece, Yugoslavia, and Bulgaria is the record of Sergeant Marvin Sigmund of Mooresville. That's amazing. I always heard that the guys flying those bomber missions had a very, very high killed in action rate. He successfully flew 50 missions. Amazing. Here's a missing article. Sergeant Hugh Denny. Mr. and Mrs. Roy Denny of North Broad Street have received a telegram from the War Department notifying them that their son, Staff Sergeant Hugh Denny, is missing in action after a raid over Germany on February 24th. Staff Sergeant Denny had been on numerous raids over Germany and had been decorated with the Air Medal. He was in an English hospital at one time being treated for a frozen ear. He was a graduate of Mooresville High School, class of 1942, before entering the service. Mr. and Mrs. Denny are hopeful that their son is alive and well, although he may be a prisoner of war of the Germans. Crazy. Here's another missing in action. Staff Sergeant William Belk had been reported missing in action after a raid over Germany. His parents had a wire from the War Department last Thursday saying their son had been missing since February 20th. He was an engineer gunner on a flying fortress based in England. Sergeant Belk entered the service in August 1942, finished the aviation machinist course at Kessler Field and the Douglas Factory School at Long Beach, California, then the Aerial Gunner School at Wendover, Utah, and finished his combat training at Geiger Field, Washington. He went overseas in November 1943. This article title says, Awarded the Silver Star. Sergeant Carol Wilford of the U.S. Marine Corps has been awarded the Silver Cross by Admiral Halsey for gallantry in action at Bougainville. Okay, see, he was in Bougainville, British Solomon Islands on the night of November 7th, 1943. Corporal Wilford accompanied a regimental executive officer to an area in which heavy fighting with the enemy was expected on the following day. In order to reach this area, it was necessary to proceed along the front of our beach defenses. The troops in which had been ordered to fire at anyone moving outside the position at night. Despite the danger of death at the hands of friendly troops, he unhesitatingly led the party along the beach within 5 to 20 feet from the defensive entrenchments, estimating the location of each position in the dark, challenging its occupants as he approached it, and instructing them to hold their fire. Having completed the perilous journey, he remained awake during the remainder of the night in order to guard the command post from attack by enemy patrols. On the following day, he exposed himself repeatedly to the enemy fire while carrying messages, acting as a guide, and conducting troop units into their designated positions, despite the danger of being shot by snipers concealed in the area. He penetrated the jungle and discovered a cache of Japanese packs containing invaluable information. His bravery and devotion to duty were in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. Next page. profiles. Luxury in Africa. Mooresville lad helps bring a riddled ship back from raid. Mooresville boys in Africa. Here's an interesting one. Bags 19 Nazis. Robert Glover, former mill boy and baseball player, is a hero in the Battle of Velletri. From Doffer boy in the Trenton Mill here to the American Legion Junior Baseball Diamond, then to professional baseball, then to the Army, and yesterday to the pedestal of hero when he bagged 19 Germans in the town of Velletri, Italy, is a story in brief of Robert Lefty Glover, 25, of Gastonia, North Carolina. Local hero. More just photographs. It's Churchill. Some planes of the time period. This here says, Richard Bong beat Rickenbacker's World War I record by shooting down 29 Japanese planes. Amazing. 29 planes. This is like a glimpse back in time to what it was like. And I guess this is how this person kind of kept track to everything that was happening around the world in the 1940s. More just photographs of that era planes. That was it. But I thought this was extremely interesting. Like I said, I think I undersold it, but you know, that happens sometimes. Still a very cool piece of history, very unique. Like I said, I've never found one like this before. And the last thing I want to show you from that house clean out we went to is this necklace and earring set. This is a vintage West German glass crystal filigree necklace and earring set. A beautiful piece. But this came in a box of mostly costume jewelry that came out of that house clean out. But once we found this and looked a little further into it, this actually sells for over, this set here in particular sells for over $300. I think we started our listing at $325. We've already got some $225 offers on this set. Here are the earrings. Beautiful. But like I said, we got 2 truckloads for just 60 bucks. So like, this is way more than pays for everything. The scrapbook sold for 40 something. So we already got most of our money back just from the scrapbook. So most of this would be profit. I'm sure we've sold some of the other stuff we got out of that house also, because we, like I said, had 2 truckloads. The lady just wanted to be rid of the stuff, which I get. It could be overwhelming when you got all that stuff and you got to clean out a house. I've done it. But anyway, those are 2 of the highlights. I actually have to ship this tomorrow, so I wanted to go ahead and try to knock this video out. But like I said, we did pretty well on the house clean out. As always, visit our store at coastalresaletherapy.com. The link will be posted in the description. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.